Hello friends, and welcome to another video in our series of Blind Date with a Book and Blind Date with a Bake, where I each month pick a random book out of my wrapped books. We only have 3 left, but I pick a random book that's been wrapped. I don't know what the books are, my partner picked them out, and I pick a random bake out of this book because it's the best baking book ever, and I bake something out of this as well. So this month was actually quite nice. It was kind of a nice break and a good little introduction into a land that I haven't really kind of stepped into yet, which is kind of exciting. And that land is graphic novels. And you may not be somebody who likes graphic novels. I thought I wouldn't be somebody who likes graphic novels, but in the last year or so, I've been reading a lot more and I find them so amazing. The art is amazing, the story is amazing. Of course not in all graphic novels, but I've gotten really lucky talking to some of the people who own these shops that sell comic books and graphic novels. And I always tell them like, hey, these are the graphic novels I've enjoyed so far. Can you offer recommendations? And they always give great recommendations. So I've gotten so lucky in finding some graphic novels that I've really loved. And I picked up Kill Your Darlings not too long ago, maybe about a year ago. And I hadn't read it yet. It's just been sitting on my shelf. I read Tokyo Ghost maybe 2 years ago, a year ago as well. I love Tokyo Ghost, and after Tokyo Ghost, I was recommended this one. So I picked this one up and I put it off to the side and it's just been sitting there. And thankfully my partner thought, maybe Melissa would like a graphic novel in her 12 months of Blind Date with a Bake and Blind Date with a Book series. So he popped this one in and I loved it. But before we get too far into the book, let's go ahead and talk about the bake and have a little bit of a baking montage. So actually, let's go ahead and just have a little rewind and then I can just show you what was picked. Any bake is good. I have my finger already in one, not because I chose it, like because I knew about it, but because that's where my finger was sitting, which is this, okay. Well, it's a nectarine cake. It's a nectarine and amaretto cake. Okay, this is the front of it right here. Ooh, okay. Kill Your Darlings. So this is, oh man, okay, this is gonna be really nice actually. So as you saw in the little flashback, we were supposed to be making this nectarine amaretto cake. I cannot pronounce the name of this cake for the life of me, so I'm not going to try. I've tried it and I need to learn Italian. That's just kind of, I guess that's what we've learned in this series is I need to learn Italian. But I was supposed to be making this nectarine cake. It has amaretto in it, almond, and nectarines. But before we taste the cake, I want to go ahead and do a little baking montage because I love doing these and show you how the bake went and tell you also the summary, or the synopsis, not summary, the synopsis of Kill Your Darlings, which is by Ethan Parker and Griffin Sheridan. They're the writers of the story, and then you have the artists Bob Quinn and John Hill. So let's go ahead and do the synopsis of Kill Your Darlings and do a little baking montage. Let's pop into the kitchen. Kill Your Darlings. Rose loves nothing more than to play pretend in a magical land of her own creation. To her, that world is as real as our own, from her fluffy friends to a terrible evil that lurks at the center of it all. In one night, the line between fantasy and reality will disappear, an ancient hunger will feed again, and Rose will be pulled into a gruesome saga that began centuries before her birth. I'm going to go ahead and read a few of the reviews so that way this baking montage can last a little bit longer. So we have Matthew Rosenberg from What's the Furthest Place from Here? Wildcats. With a heartbreaking hook, gorgeous art, and a story that will keep you guessing, Kill Your Darlings grabs you from the very first panels and never lets go. If you've been waiting for exciting new voices in comics, the wait is over. Daniel Warren Johnson, do a powerbomb, Transformers. It's moments that you least expect that make stories special, and Kill Your Darlings has those moments in spades. Jade McKay, Avengers, Moon Knight. Kill Your Darlings is a skateboard ride down the steepest hill in town. High speed, tooth rattling, swerving back and forth in an attempt to starve off calamity that could strike at any time from any direction. We have Scott Snyder from Batman. A dark, wondrous coming-of-age story that stirs up horror, fantasy, drama to conjure something uniquely stunning. Easily one of the best debuts of 2023. And we have Brian Michaels Bendis from Power's Ultimate Spider-Man. This is why people buy comics. This is why people make comics. Okay, I know you're excited to get into Kill Your Darlings, but first, before we get into the book, let's go ahead and talk about this bake, because holy moly, this bake has a rise. I could smell this cake baking, and it was honestly delightful. So, not gonna lie, it was baked last night, popped in the fridge, and I think it being cold makes the flavors just way better. Yes, I've already had a slice. I had a slice for breakfast, because that's what us bakers do. But the cake itself is quite dense, but it's not dense, so dense that it's like stodgy, which is really nice. The almonds that are inside the cake and then also on top create a nice flavor with also the amaretto that you've put inside. And there's only like a little bitty tiny bit of amaretto. But the cake itself has a really nice flavor, and the nectarines on top add this like fruity flavor and also moisture inside the cake too. So it's just honestly very, very delightful cake. I'm honestly surprised with how much the amaretto comes through, but I think it's the help that you have with the almond flour, but also the almond pieces inside the cake and also on top of the cake, that it actually like enhances the amaretto flavor without having too much in there. I did notice one thing. I was only supposed to bake it for 40 to 45 minutes. I ended up baking it for almost an hour and a half, and the outside ended up getting quite dark. It looks burnt, but it's not. It's almost burnt. And I think for me, it's not the bake itself, it's the oven. And that's one of the hard parts about baking, is sometimes it is the bake. Sometimes it's your ingredients. Sometimes it can be your oven. And we noticed that the gummy around our oven is starting to break, so I think I have to replace the gummy around the oven door, because the cake just ended up taking way longer to bake than we expected. The outside was already done, but the middle was still quite raw. And the other thing I noticed was that in Melissa Forte's recipe, her cake had like a dome in the middle. I can't find the cake. But her cake had like a dip in the middle, and my cake didn't. And I'm trying to figure out why. So if you know why, I'd be curious if you know why. Not why you know why, but why you think that could possibly be a thing. So all in all, though, this cake is really delicious. I think the amaretto flavor or the almond flavor that comes through is just really delightful. It's really kind of fall-y without being fall-y. Like, there's no fall spices in here. There's no cinnamon, nutmeg, none of that. There's only salt as a spice and sugar. I learned sugar used to be or is considered a spice, but there's only salt in here. And I find that so fascinating because this cake actually has a really intense, like, almost spice flavor, but I think it's all the almond and then the mix of the fresh nectarine and the lemon zest. So you get this like nice mixture of flavors. So we have 4 main flavor profiles in here. We have nectarine, we have almond, we have lemon zest, and we also have vanilla extract. So we have like this really interesting springy but also fall-y flavor combination. It's really fascinating, but honestly, very delicious cake, very nice and not fluffy, but not stodgy. It's a dense cake, but it's honestly really delicious, and it goes perfectly well with coffee or a cup of tea, so I highly recommend it. And it's delicious for breakfast. So all in all, delicious cake. I highly recommend it. I mean, I'm going to keep recommending Melissa Forte's baking book because honestly, each recipe in here has been really great. The one difference I would probably do with this cake in the future is I would use a bigger baking pan just so I have more nectarines on top. So it called for a 20 centimeter or 8-inch baking form. I'd probably use one that's like just a few centimeters bigger, just so I can add another layer of nectarines on top. But honestly, delicious. I'm happy with it. And What's great also with baking is each time you bake a new recipe, you kind of learn some new ideas, some new tricks, or hey, maybe I need to do this. As soon as I put the cake batter inside the baking form, I thought to myself, I think this cake is going to be a little bit too thick. And it ended up being too thick, but that's not on Melissa Fortes, that's on my oven. I'm gonna blame it on my oven. So I highly recommend this cake. It's really delicious, and if you love almond, then it's a perfect cake for you, and nectarines. And honestly, it ended up being a perfect end of summer cake. Like, it has the freshness of the nectarines, but like I said, with the almonds, it has kind of like this like spiciness to it, which is really fascinating. Tasty. But we're here to also talk about a book. So let's go ahead and talk about Kill Your Darlings. I'm gonna put the cake away so that way I don't keep eating it. And we're gonna go ahead and start with the non-spoilers of this book. If you have not been here before, I go ahead and talk about the non-spoilers at first, and then I'll warn you about when we're gonna talk about the spoilers. Honestly, this video is gonna be pretty quick because this is a graphic novel. We're not dealing with such an in-depth, complex line of story, and also as long, because instead of being like a 400-page book with a lot of details, for example, Don't Take the A Train or Valerio from last month, Kill Your Darlings has pretty much a really easy story. So what I was saying is I'm going to go ahead and talk about the non-spoilers of this story first, so that way you can kind of get an idea if this is a book that you would want to pick up. I'm going to keep recommending graphic novels now that I'm into graphic novels, so that way you can get into graphic novels too. But I also want to go ahead and then jump into spoilers, so I can kind of talk about some other ideas I had and kind of share some thoughts I had of the deeper end of the story. So the spoiler section is going to be on end. I'm going to go ahead and warn you before we get there, but the non-spoilers will be now. And if you don't want to listen to the spoiler section, I'll go ahead and put a little timestamp so you know when we're going to be opening our new book. We have 3 left, which is crazy. So I'll put a timestamp down below so you know when to jump to, so you know where we're going to be picking our new book and our new bake for next month. So, Kill Your Darlings. Let's go ahead and jump in. So Kill Your Darlings was a graphic novel that was recommended to me because I liked Tokyo Ghost, which is another like darker graphic novel. It has kind of like this beautiful back-end world, but it takes place in the future, and it's very dark and gruesome and deadly, and yeah. And so I mentioned this to one of the owners of a different comic book store, and he recommended Kill Your Darlings, and I thought, it's beautiful. It's also very bright, which is very different, but when I flipped through it, I was surprised with how gruesome it is. So if you don't like gruesome, maybe this is not a graphic novel for you. But if you're looking for something a little bit darker and a little bit more almost meaningful, I think Kill Your Darlings could be for you. So Kill Your Darlings follows a young girl named Rose, and we end up meeting Rose when she is about, I think, 7 or 8 years old. I'm not exactly sure how old she is, but she has a very, very active imagination. And she has created a world that is just full of beautiful fantasy things. She ends up having an army where she is going ahead and ruling different kingdoms. She's making peace treaties with different kingdoms. She's learning how to bring her troops together. Here, I'm gonna show a couple pages. I don't wanna show too many pages because, of course, this is a very short novel. But she ends up bringing her troops together to be able to fight in battles. She's a queen, she's a princess, and she is going to fight these battles with her warriors, which ends up showing a really positive feminine energy, in the sense of like, little girls can also not just play Barbies, little girls can also fight battles. And I love that so much. It's such a positive, like, we're also intense in our imagination, and we also want to be warriors. I remember being a little girl and running through the woods and playing with my brother, and I don't remember what games we were playing, but I do remember we weren't playing Barbies out in the woods. We were playing battles or running from something or doing something crazy and fun and active and what you used to consider boyish. And so I used to be considered more tomboyish. now I've just realized, no, I wasn't tomboyish. I was just a kid having fun. So the fact that this novel represents this young girl who, hey, she also is sensitive and weak at times, and she loves things and she cares for things, but she's also a warrior princess. So I love that very much. So that's one thing I really enjoyed about this novel, is that we're following a young girl who gets to just feel strong, and that's so lovely. So we follow Rose, and she has this beautiful imagination where she's created another world where her fantasy can run wild. We end up learning very early on that her mom is very busy, doesn't have time to play with her. I mean, within the first couple pages, we learn that her mom is really busy at work, struggling at paying bills, and we have Rose just living a happy little girl's life, because that's what kids want. They want to live in this imagination world of just fun and excitement and craziness. I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but the synopsis said this, so I feel like I could talk about this. Rose ends up getting pulled into her imaginary land. Like, it almost feels like she's living in this land, and so us as the reader get to try to figure out if she's really there or not. It's fascinating how the art is put together and how we have different colors to represent different areas. For example, when she's at home, we end up seeing that it's very gray and muddy and dark, and so we see that this is not her imagination land. This is uncomfortable and sad. And when she's pulled into her other land, it's amazing how the colors pop and how everything looks, and it's beautiful and bright. And we as adults, I think, can understand this, of like seeing a child's imagination bloom and become something so much more. And that's something I think a lot of us as adults miss. We miss that imagination part. We miss that ability to be creative and explorative and having this world of just beautifulness or craziness or powerfulness, or just having our imagination run wild. And I think as adults we have a hard time kind of pulling back into that imagination world, but it's actually extremely important. And being able to see this little girl, and now teenager, being able to see this wonderful, beautiful land again and really jump into this imagination is just so beautiful. It's really, really great. So the story itself is not, I'm gonna say, positive in the sense of most of it. We end up following Rose, and she gets pulled back to her kind of imagination land, her fantasy land, and there's this really dark power living there and pretty much destroying it. So her job now is to protect this world and to save this world. So we follow her journey in what this looks like and how she ends up doing it, and if she's able to do it. And I think those are really important parts, is that most of the story, we don't know if she's going to be successful or not. And I think that's what keeps you getting pulled through the story. And also the art, I'm gonna keep saying the art is just so well done. I really loved it. I thought it offered a great contrast between the different worlds. Also, when there's questions of if this dark power is gonna take over this other world, this fantasy world she adopted, because in that part you actually start seeing the colors start to fade to this grayish color that we saw in her reality. So it's really, really well done in that sense. There are a couple parts in the story that I felt confused by or wondering if it was important, but in the end I still think it's important. I still think it makes sense, and I still really enjoyed it. I think it was really well done. I read it in one sitting. I was just pulled through the entire story. So I'm not going to tell you more about Kill Your Darlings, because honestly I think you should go pick it up. I think you should read it. I think more people should be enjoying graphic novels, because it's not just nerdy. It's really just enjoying beautiful art and beautiful storylines in a different way than if we were reading novels. So I really enjoyed this. I don't generally give these star ratings, my monthly read star ratings, because I don't want to influence you too much. But for me, this is like Tokyo Ghost. I ended up giving Tokyo Ghost 5 stars. I'm giving this 5 stars because I loved it so much. This is definitely a graphic novel I'd be rereading again, and if because they haven't. But if Parker and Sheridan ever came out with another graphic novel story, I would definitely be reading it because this was absolutely wonderful. And as a young woman reading a story of a little girl having this vibrant and intensive warrior storyline, it just made my heart happy because it's just so beautiful seeing this little girl being able to live in a fantasy world where she can feel strong and powerful. And so I honestly, that was just part of the story that I really, really did love. And I would totally encourage every little girl to imagine themselves as a warrior and strong and mighty. And we as women, and hey, as men as well, we should all be imagining ourselves as strong warrior people that are just fighting through the day to enjoy each and every moment we have. So that's my non-spoiler review. I know that's not very much, but I don't want to give away too much in this story. I think it's important for you to live through this story together with Rose, and the only way of doing that is reading it. So that's the end of my non-spoilers. If you don't want to see spoilers, go ahead and jump down to the chapters below and jump to the end so you can see what book and bake we'll be baking in October. And we won't be baking a book, but you know what I mean. But what we'll be doing in October, and we're going to be jumping into spoilers in 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So I'm not going to show you the pictures because I think it's not good to show you the pictures of another artist. I'll show you some just to kind of represent the story a little bit, but I don't want it to show you the entire book because I want you to go buy it. That's the honest truth. So, Kill Your Darlings. Kind of going off of what I was talking about in the spoiler or the non-spoiler section, I don't want to repeat myself, so I'm just going to continue on. There are 2 parts in this story that I may have not connected with as well, and I was trying to figure out if this was just a me problem or if maybe I missed something or maybe the story could have done better connecting it. And that's at the very beginning. So we start this novel off as actually seeing a witch being burned at stake, and she says, "Please, I promise I'll be good." And so we have this very intense moment of this witch being burned at stake. She's begging for her parents to save her, and her parents are saying no, she needs this. So it's very dark, very, very gruesome. That's the part before chapter 1. So we learned that there's a witch being burnt, and this is in 1692. We jump to the future to follow Rose and her story. And this is where we find Rose in her warrior getup and her fighting her armies, or fighting with her armies, not fighting her armies. And then we also learn about how her mom is struggling with bills and her mom's not able to spend time with her because she's working so much. So we end up getting a lot of backstory just within the first couple pages. But we see that Rose is a very imaginative girl. She can take care of herself in most ways, which is something that we never want to have to see. Like we never want to see a young kid having to take care of themselves at that age of being 7, 8 years old and not having a parent to love and care for them, or just a family member or anybody to love and care for them. But we see Rose as a very strong young little girl, and we are rooting for her. And we end up seeing kind of how the story evolves with her friendship as well, because she has her best friend who is named Elliot. So we end up also getting introduced to Rose's best friend Elliot, and they're just very cute, very fun, and they both have a very active imagination. We also kind of learn that Elliot's dealing with some struggles at home as well, so it's not just Rose. It's kind of the realization that we all have our own problems at home, and we never know how bad they are for each other, which is honestly very true. I think it's really hard to tell what's going on in other people's lives, especially if you don't talk about those things, and especially if you're around the age of 7 and you just don't really understand how terrible they are. And so we end up getting to know Rose a little bit more, and at one point we end up getting pulled into Rose's fantasy land with her, and we see that everything is just dead. It's destroyed, it's dead, this is where it gets really dark and disgusting and creepy. And we also get introduced to Rose's evil that lives in her land, and it's very well done. It's starting to mix this grayness from her reality to her fantasy world, which is so well done in the sense of what ends up happening as we get older. We start losing this colorful, vibrant imagination we have, and it starts getting mixed in with our maybe darker realization of what reality is. Yeah. And her mom ends up dying, and they blame it on her. She gets sent to a hospital. We also get a little bit more of an image of the witch and what's happening with the witch. It jumps back and forth in time, so we end up following the witch years later in 1700, and she is angry because no matter what happens, she just can't be safe. So we start seeing kind of this like world jump between these two characters, the witch and Rose. And at one point, while Rose is in the home, it's a couple years later, and she's, I think, 15 or 16 years old. I'm not really sure on the ages, but she ends up getting pulled back into her fantasy world. She ends up getting rescued by Elliot and her characters that are from her fantasy world, and she gets pulled back into her world with Elliot, so Elliot's now there. And this is where we start to wonder, is this reality, or is this just a broken little girl who's lost everything? Really fascinating. I won't go into the psychology of it because I just don't understand it. But I do find it really fascinating because it ends up bringing that question, is this a narrator and a character we can trust and we believe that she's actually in her world, or do we not trust her? And we end up kind of seeing why Elliot's there, why Rose is there, what's happening. We see a lot of the characters being happy to see that Rose is back. Their warriors are happy to see that Rose is back. We get this like lovely little introduction to some of the characters. We get this warmth of what this imagination land really is. But then we also get the horrors and the goriness of this evil that lives there as well. It's so well done. And I think the story ends up being put into a wonderful little package of being able to explain the hard parts of growing up in maybe a lower class family or a poor family, or maybe a very not healthy family aspect, and trying to survive in this aspect, and being little and not understanding it, and having this imagination to get you pulled into a wonderful land, but then also still trying to encourage that as we get older. I'm probably putting way more into this than it probably has, but it's just really well done. I really like the storyline of this. We end up learning a little bit more about Rose's mother and what happened with her. We end up finding out that Rose's mother ended up killing the son of the witch, which is really fascinating. And this is one of those parts where I got really confused. We end up seeing that Rose's mom ran over the witch's grandson, but we also have now previously seen that the witch, we had 3 scenes of the witch previously. We had one scene where she's burned at the stake. The next one, she is found by a bunch of huntsmen who are hunting down witches, and she ends up getting really angry and killing them because they've now killed her whole family again. And then, or not again, but killed her whole family. And now she's angry and she's killed all of them. We see her again, and it's like many years later, and she has found a husband and she's had a baby, and now she's eating her own baby. And this is that jump between, I think, storyline 2 and storyline 3 with the witch. I think that was too far of a jump for me. I needed to see more of her downfall to understand why she would do that. Because on the 4th one, we then see her kill her own daughter, who has now had her, made her a grandson. But why kill her daughter many years later after she had her grandson? These are the 2 areas where I'm feeling a little more disconnected, and I may have not understood that jump. I do understand we're supposed to understand that she is angry and evil and not happy, and so it's almost like she kills because there's no point in happiness, she sees no happiness, and we end up seeing that she finds a little bit of happiness in her grandson's eyes. But I'm trying to figure out why she killed her daughter later on, many years later. It's really confusing. That part maybe is the part where I'm most lost. But Later on, we end up finding that Rose's mom, when she was pregnant with Rose, actually ran the grandson over of the witch. And the witch kind of promised that she would be the end of Rose's mom. And she ended up putting a curse on her, saying that she'll always deal with bad things, which was true. She could never make very much money. She was stuck being pregnant. She ended up having no male figure or any other figure in her life, any other parent, any other person to help her raise her own child. And it was just a lot of just bad things happening to Rose's mom. And then Rose's mom dies. What we end up finding out is that Rose is also a witch. And that's why she was able to create this imaginary land. She was able to create another land. And that's when I think we have this understanding that our character is actually powerful. Again, I'm not sure if it's honesty or not honesty. I'm not sure if what happened is true or not. That's also not what I'm looking for. I'm not saying we can trust our main character, Rose, and if this is actually her true land, or maybe she's just still in her home, in her care facility, taking care of her, and maybe she's just mentally unstable because of her mom's death and all the other things. Maybe, but I'm gonna think on the positive side and say that she actually has witch powers and she lives in this imaginary land that's not imaginary, but actually her real land, because she's a witch. So we end up following her, going back to this land, realizing that she has to fight this evil. The witch is there as well, and she's like, I'm going to suck out the life of your land because it's power. So we see this transition of goriness, a lot of death, and then Rose being like, we need to battle. And so we go from Rose being 7, 8 years old, putting her troops together, and now she's 16, 17, being like, we need to put our troops together again. And we skip a few years forward, so now she's a young adult, and she is going into battle with Elliot, because Elliot also realized, hey, why do I keep going home? Why do I want to go home to a land and a family that has no more connection to me? So we get this strong development of these two characters pairing together and fighting and working together with also all of Rose's villagers, and it's just really beautiful. I really liked it. And then we have our giant battle end scene, and it's so well done until the end, where we have the witch kind of be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna sacrifice myself. And I'm trying to figure out, would it go that quickly? Would it make sense? But you know what? With it being such a short graphic novel, I'm not mad that that happened. I'm not mad that these characters had such a quick development, because to be honest, we don't have a lot of time to be able to have character development like we do in novels that are 600-700 pages long, or even 300 pages long. We have a short graphic novel that we have to have our character go through. We have to be introduced to our character. We have to see our character in normal life. We then have to see our character go through this corruption or negative thing, and then we have to see the development to be able to see that character resolve the problem. So, I mean, we don't have much time to be able to do this, and with not a lot of dialogue and mostly being carried through the photos, this makes sense. I mean, it makes sense to have that quick transition. And not that the dialogue is bad. The dialogue is great. And I know that Parker and Sheridan also created the story. So to have a story being told in such few words, but in such amazing art style, is just really great. And it was really fascinating to see it all built together. And I think the fact of how it developed to the end was also really great. We end up kind of seeing Rose come to terms with her childhood and realizing, like, yeah, not all of it was great, but she did learn some really good things from it. Like the fact that her mom, she may have never felt like her mom wanted her, and maybe there were times where her mom did question if she wanted her, but we have this very beautiful scene of her mom saying that she loves her stories, and I think that's just really sweet. And I think the The very, very end, when Rose opens the gate between her imagination land to the real world, that's probably where I'm very most broken about, because I'm wondering if we would be so acceptable about like an elephant pig man just walking up to us, like if we would just be acceptable of that. And I feel like we wouldn't, but hey, this is imagination land, so it's perfectly fine. I think it's really sweet that we see also Rose with her small son later on, and how she is encouraging her son to not fear things, but be strong, and that he can also fight his battles. And to be honest, I think it's just a very beautiful story. I think it was so well done in the sense of how short it was, but how well designed it was, and how well the story was pulled together. Yeah, there are holes, but there's holes in books that are also 3,000-4,000 pages long. So for us to have a very cohesive story in such a short little section is just so great. And I love the fact that I can get the whole collection in one book and I'm done with it. I don't have to worry about other pieces coming out. So this was really great. I highly recommend it. I think it was beautiful, and I love the art style. I don't want to spoil the art style, but it is just fantastic. I showed you a few pieces, but they did such a great job. They being Bob Quinn, who I believe Bob Quinn was the main artist and John Hill was lettering. So Bob Quinn was the main illustrator, and then John Hill is the guy who does the lettering for the novel, but they did such a great job. So I highly recommend picking this up, or picking up another novel that's maybe illustrated by Quinn, or lettered by John Hill. So very lovely, very fantastic. I highly recommend, and I highly, highly recommend picking up graphic novels. It's just such a fun way to be able to spend a Sunday or Saturday or any day if you just want to sit down, relax for a few hours, and just take in a really beautiful story. Maybe it's a little gruesome. I do have to say this book is a little gruesome, but it didn't bother me, but it might bother other people. So just as a warning, but truly lovely, highly recommend. And yeah, that's Kill Your Darlings by Ethan Parker and Griffin Sheridan, and illustrated by Bob Quinn and lettered by John Hill. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and jump into what we're gonna be baking and reading next. So let's go ahead and do the baking part first, because I really enjoy doing that part. So this is going to be deciding what we're going to be baking next. I'm going to open it up here. This is what we have. What are they? Ooh, biscotti senza uva, egg-free cookies. These look really nice because they look really easy. So a few of my regular customers down at the bakery are egg intolerant, so I came up with this recipe for them to be able to enjoy a good cup of tea with a cookie in our tea room. Use this recipe as a base of countless variations. I might do a variation on this, but I'm not sure yet. So this is a very easy, just basic tea cookie, which I love a basic tea cookie. I think they're always really great because you can add some thyme into it and make it a cookie with thyme, like the herb. And you can also add chai to it. You can also add black tea or chai tea or anything else to it. They're really, really great for a beautiful, lovely, just nice little treat with your coffee or tea. So I'm really excited for this one. So we're gonna be making these beautiful little tea cookies. And I have to put a little sticker in it so I don't lose it. I always lose the page. And for our book this month, do we want to read a fatter one or a thinner one? I think we're going to do this one. This is the tallest one of the two. So let's go ahead and see what we're going to be reading. Oh, where'd you go, Bernadette? I got this book also when I was living in the US. And I think I started this book because there is, wait, hold on, where'd it go? A coupon for American Eagle for 10 euros off from 2013 to 2014. That is how long I've had this book. So I'm looking forward to reading this. I think it'll be a fast read too, even though it's kind of a thicker book, but the writing's quite big. So this book, let me go ahead and read you the back. When 15-year-old B claims a family trip to Antarctica as a reward for perfect grades, her fiercely intelligent but agoraphobic mother, Bernadette, throws herself into preparation for the trip. Worn down by years of trying to live in Seattle life. Hey, I grew up in Seattle, or near Seattle. Years of trying to live the Seattle life she never wanted, Bernadette is on the brink of a meltdown. As disaster follows disaster, she disappears, leaving her family to pick up the pieces, which is exactly what Bee does, weaving together emails, invoices, and school memos to reveal the secret past that Bernadette has been hiding for decades. Where'd You Go, Bernadette is an ingenuously entertaining novel about family coming to terms with who they are and the power of daughter's love for her imperfect mother. I think this is a good time to read this one. I think when I was reading it, so that was at least 11 years ago. So I was 21, 22 years old. And I think being a 32-year-old woman now, I'll be able to maybe connect with this story a little bit more different than I would have if I was 21, 22 years old. So I think this is actually a really good time to pick up this book. And I do have to, off of that comment, I think it's always fascinating when we find books that may have not worked with us when we were younger, but work with us when we're older. Same way around books that I've read now as an older woman, older being 32, it's not old, but being older than I was, but reading books now that I've realized, oh, this book would have been really good when I was younger. And I always find that really fascinating because there's just some books that hit harder at different ages. So I'm really curious as to how I'm going to like this book, especially since I did read about half of it, it looks like. So I'm fascinated. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be baking beautiful little tea cookies, which I think will be perfect for, I put it in the book and I still lost the page. There it is. Okay. I think these biscuits, these tea cookies, will actually go perfect with this book. So I think it'll be a nice little treat of Where Did Bernadette Go and tea cookies. So I'm really excited for this month. I hope you are as well. I know this video was a little bit shorter than my others, but that's because we were reading a graphic novel. So thank you. Woo! Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for hanging out with me. I hope you guys like this video. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know if you kind of like these videos. I've been doing them for a few months, but I've just really enjoyed having a time to sit down and really discuss a book or discuss a bake. And sometimes being in discussion actually helps me think a little bit deeper into the stories or even into the bake. So I really appreciate sharing these thoughts with you guys. I hope you're enjoying them as well. If you do, make sure you give it a like because it does help me out. And in the sense of knowing that you guys like these videos, but also subscribe if you're not subscribed because hey, come join the cozy crew. We're having fun here. So thanks again so much for being here and I hope you have a fantastic day, a lovely weekend, and I'll see you guys next time at the end of October for our next Blind Date with a Bake and Blind Date with a Book review. And I'll see you guys in a couple days with a new fall fun video. So until then, ciao!